Hi guys, it's Blackie. Okay, recently I did a video in my home showing how I stocked a fireplace. Many of you responded very well to that and said, you like that, more of that stuff. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about how to run a fireplace for heating. Now we've already dealt with one of the methods of loading. So let's talk about the wood itself for a second. And I touched on this whenever I did the first one. I talked about having some a little green, some dry, small little kindling in that bucket, etc. And that's the method that I was taught when I was young by the old timers that were running these stoves or open fireplaces to heat the home, and had been since, the early 20s and stuff like that. It comes to the Great Depression that way. It's not complicated, but it is not dead simple either. But one of the things you need to understand is wet wood can be your friend, okay? Now one, I do want dry wood. I do want as dry as possible that little tinder I showed you in that bucket, which is the small little sticks that go around the yard and the neighborhood and I pick up. And I crumble up and I put in the bucket till I fill up a 5-gallon bucket. So when I go to build a fire, I put my fire lay in. I put the logs on the back wall, and then I'm going to put 2 on the side, and then I'm going to build a fire in between that, in that U-shaped area, so that I can capture the heat and hold the heat. I also want the logs that are on the back wall and the side to be kind of green. Now that doesn't mean I cut them today. It means it's seasoned to a point, but that it is actually still kind of wet. How do you know something is wet? There's several dead giveaways. Here is a limb that I got today. Look at the end of it. See, it has a little or no smell, but you look at the bark, and the bark is still green. I mean, if I scratch it, it's actually still green underneath. This limb was cut off the tree just a couple days ago. Okay. Now, this hunk right here still has bark on it and etc., but this is relatively light, and that's a dead giveaway. Even though these two pieces are not terribly dissimilar in weight, this one is double the weight of that, because the living tree has more water content than really it does wood in it. And so therefore this is a very wet piece of wood. This is not so much. But it's a good thing to work if you're buying your firewood from a local provider. And I always encourage that, because I'm a big fan of American, local, things like that. And I have a local provider that I get mine from. And so I talk to them and tell them what I'm looking for. I want about 1/3 of a cord of green wood. I mean green, cut it this week. I want about 1/3 of it dry. I mean really, really dry. Last year's if possible. And I want 1/3 of a little bit of both. Where it has been cut, it has dried a while, but it is not that sopping wet, but it's not bone dry. Why do we do this? The dry stuff burns very hot, but it burns very quick too. That sopping wet stuff has to dry out. And what that means is when I put it in the back of the fireplaces, the back logs, and I get my fire going, it produces steam. That's when you look at the end of the limb and you're actually seeing that sap. That's actually water evaporating out, where you've heated the limb to the point that the water inside the tree has boiled and is expanding out as steam. That's where it gets to the end of the limb and that foamy, sappy starts melting out. What that does is it burns very slowly, but it makes good coals once it's burning. So you never start with that, see. But I'm going to make that transition during the night. So I've made my U we talked about, where they're 2 logs on the back wall, and I may even, if I want an all-night or a much longer fire, double stack. So I got 2 logs, one on top of the other, on the back wall, end to end, like that. And then on either side, coming to me, I've got another pretty good sized logs that are not the dead green, but are a little drier, okay? And they're standing up, leaning toward that back wall. So anything rolls to the back wall, I don't want anything to roll into the house. I want it to roll in the back wall and stay in that fireplace, right? Now between them and this U right here is where I'm gonna build my fire. I'm gonna put my fire source here, leaning it back against that green log, and I'm gonna use bone dry stuff on that light stuff. With practice, you get where you can tell just by picking up the log how heavy it is. Now this one is smaller than that one, but this is heavier than this. That means this has got more water content in it. You can see the look of it. I doubt if you can see in the color, but it's more of a yellow, and this is more of a white to look at the eyes. White means to green. Excuse me. That means that this has actually still got a water content. So by me stacking the wood up, I pick up each individual piece, you see. So when I pick this up on a 1, 2, or 3, which is it? Well, it's not as heavy as that big piece, which is definitely going to the wet. This is somewhere in the middle, you know. And then I'll grab another piece and pick it up. Now, this is dry. This piece right here, light, dry. Means it'll burn easy. It's also be easy to split down to small pieces. And so green wood, straight off a tree, will burn if you generate a big bed of coals. I'm talking about like a beach ball bed of hot coals, and then you split that green stuff down small, like 2 inches. It will burn then because it will rapidly dry and then burn. See, but my big base logs back there on the back, they're going to take a couple of hours, maybe even 4, 5, 6 hours to dry out where they'll burn. So I've got that back wall back there with that U, and it's absorbing this heat as I've got my fire up here in the front of the more easily burning stuff. And that's like cooking this back log when it's green. And that water comes out, and when the water comes out, it's drying out. When the water stops coming out, now that log is drying, it's getting hot, and it will burn on the surface, and it'll start producing coals. And it produces really good coals that are slow burning coals. I want that. I don't want just whoosh, fast heat coming out of a fireplace. I want a continuous fire, see. So by doing that, where I've got a green back wall and the 2 side walls are so on. A 1 is wet and a 3 is dry. The back walls are 1s. The 2 side walls are 2s, and the stuff in the middle is a 3. Therefore it's wet. Okay. Here's the way I look at it. If it's a wet, it's a 1. Okay? To the left. If it's dry, really dry, it's a 3. Anything in between is a 2. Okay? So I build my fire lay. My back logs are number 1s. They're green and wet. My 2 logs that come out front, they're 2s. What goes in the center of this U is a 3. And I build up this bed of coals in the center of this. As I'm doing that, I'm cooking this and cooking that, and these number 2s will go to burning quicker than that big base log on the back that's a number number 1, right? So my dry stuff generates the heat that cooks this and gets this number 2 to cooking, and then it rolls to the middle back toward that green back log. After an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, or whatever, those backlogs are now dried and they're burning as well, and I'm going to roll them into the fire and put another green log on the back. So then it becomes a conveyor belt, see, where the center of my U is my combustion chamber. The two sides are number 2 wood that's drying out. My back wall back here is always my green wood. Okay, so that as this green wood catches on fire, remember I'm double stacked, so this top log is going to burn first, right? I rotate it into the burn chamber. It comes down in here and produces coals. And that new green log, it goes to the back wall. A number 1 goes to the back wall, thud. And it starts the cooking process. Well, it's going to take 4 or 5 hours for that log to dry out and really start burning. Good. I'm doing it over time. Once I get this big bed of coals in the middle, my number 3s, my dry, I quit using. I'm strictly using now number 1, which is wet, and number 2, which is in between. See, and I'm saving my dry. So that as I'm going through my wood I just got, and I pick up and go, yeah, that's a number 2, because I can feel the relative weight of it, moisture content. And I pick this up and go, that's a number 3. It's dry. It goes up here. So as I'm stacking it, I'm organizing my fire for the night, and I'm also organizing my wood for the night and for later on. See, realizing that that number 2 is going to dry out on its own over a period of days. And so that number 2 may become a number 3. I go to pick it up, whoop, it's dried out. This is real light. I'll put it on the number 3 and I'll go back and grab one that's got a little bit of weight. See, you're constantly sorting your wood to get the most out of it. See, so let's recap. Find your source wood. If you are strictly the only one, you're getting your own wood from the ground up, then you need to start really in the spring and find the blown downs and stuff like that that have been dropped by storms or whatever, and process that to begin your fire pile. That will become your number 3s, your dry. You want it dry and ready to burn whenever you need the first fire in October. It needs to be fully dry, 5 or 6 months dry. So you've got it. Your number 2s will be harvested in the summer, right at there at the end of the summer. And your number 1s, the ones that are going to be wet, you'll harvest them at the beginning of fall up until about the middle to the later fall. You want your firewood pile to be replenished, but at the end of the season, I want all of it gone. I don't want it up close to the house. It can bring in termites or stuff like that. So in the summer months when I'm not running a fireplace, I don't have more than just a few little pieces around. I don't want a big firewood pile there. I want to start at the end of spring here in my area. I start gathering my winter dried firewood. Now, for those of you that are working with someone who runs a firewood production thing, they're producing it. Make friends with them. Bring them an extra 6-pack. Whatever it takes to get on their good side, because they can make your life so much easier. I work with that local person, and I come in, it's an older couple, and I come in and I say, okay, I need dead dry. I'm resupplying my larder and that I need dead dry. Oh, pile number 4 right there, that been there for that. They know their piles out there. And they've got a yard that's just big sets already set to go. They know what's been there the longest and also what's the newest. So when I went in for this, I said, okay, I need a mix. I need some number 2 in there. He said, oh, right there, that one, take that one. That's where it was some dry, some wet, some whatever, mixed together. That's what I want. So now as I unload this, realizing that one right there that I've already pointed out, that was probably cut 3 or 4 days ago. That thing is green as a day is long. This will go onto my number 1 pile. That'll make a good backlog. That'll burn for hours and hours and hours because it'll burn so slow because of the water content. This that's dry will go into my number 3 because it's ready to go right now. And my number 2s, like this or that or this one down here, that will become the one in the middle. So like I said, I start my fire, the back logs or the green logs, because I'm going to burn this fire a long time. My 2 sides that are coming out, those are number 2s. and I put my number 3 bone dry in the middle and I start my fire. I get the fire going. I build up that bed of coals. Okay. Once I get the bed of coals, then I'm going to put the number 2s in. These on the side are the first ones to road on top of that, and 2 fresh number 2s come in there and start drying. I don't even worry about that back wall until it's good and burning. And once it's burning really well, I rotate it into the fire and add a new green back log to the back. And I keep my fire rotating. Now when I say base log, let me clarify that right quick. A base log is something big and gnarly. That is a base. Yay! That is a base. See where it's busted off and left the limbs sticking off of it. It's gnarly, it's big. It'll go against that back wall, just like that. I'll put it against the back wall like this so that the flames can let, and the coals can get under here and start heating it up and cooking it from the bottom. This will burn off, but I want to cook it from the bottom going up. Heat rises, remember? So I want my coals from my dry stuff up against it, heating it up, starting to cook. Once this is burned about 1/3 of the way in, it'll get rotated into the main fire, and a new green one will go to the back. See, this one actually, by weight of it, it's a number 2. So this one will go on one of my sides or up on top when I need to keep a fire going hot and quick. As your fire is burning, you got to kind of regulate. You don't want this, my God, huge flames. That's not the point. I want continuous heat of a certain level. If I'm having to run my dampener wide open because all this huge amount of heat, I'm losing 80% of my heat's going up that stack. I want to get my fire down to where it's a big bed of coals and just some flame, like a cooking fire would be. And then I'm going to close my dampener down just a little bit, like I've talked about, to make sure I'm still getting a draft, but a lot more heat's coming out. And I want to maintain that. So I keep that bed of coals. If my bed of coals starts to shrink a little bit, I'm kind of running out of coals because I got too much green, I may throw a piece or 2 of my dry, my number 3 in there to give me quick coals and bring the heat back up. At the same time, if I've got too much heat, it's burning too fast, I'll put the number 2s in there to slow the fire down a little bit. I want long fire burn time, and I want a constant amount of heat coming out. Not a big flare, nor a little bitty smoky something that ain't going. My green stuff is not going to burn unless it's got a big pile of heat, a big bed of coals. Once I get that, once I get a bed of coals established, I'm not going to be adding in any more number 3 bone dry unless I have to perk it back up. The number 2 will be my primary feeding, and my number 1 will be the long-term coal, constantly going into heat and rotating. This way I can start a fire in the morning, stock it, keep it, do my stuff around the house, and every couple of hours, say every hour, go by and just touch it up a little bit and keep a constant fire going to heat my house on them cold, cold, bitter days. Now on the days where I don't need it, where my temperature outside the house may raise up to a temperature I don't have to worry about it, I may not even start the fire until 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, because my sun will be down before 5 and then the cold temperature starts. So I want to have that warmth in the house to roll on through. I gauge the warmth of the house and gauge how much fire I need. Sorry to be so long-winded, guys, but it's one of those complicated things that's subtle, and a lot of it is just hands-on. I'm trying to take 50 years of hands-on and explain it to you, like over the telephone, like my grandmama used to say, tell it to them long distance. Granny could cook over a telephone, but me, sometimes. I'm just trying to pass on some education for you. Thank you very much for watching my channel. I greatly appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this content, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie, wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.